Good evening. Welcome to the conversation. How's everybody doing?
Great.
All right. You know how we start off. We know OB will be here with us a little later, but he always starts the show. And the first thing that he always says is, "How was your weekend?" Let's start with Cousin May. She has a big old smile on her face over there. We're going to hear from Cousin May. She's going to tell us how her weekend was.
I am doing great. I had a wonderful weekend. I ended up going to a Toastmaster event, and I was the MC. And I had a great time, and we talked about storytelling, and I went into my head as if I was in a classroom with the children and pulled out some fun and crazy things, as if I was the narrator of the story of a live audio book for the audience. And we had a good time. We had wonderful stories. We had raffles. It was just, and we had a lot of people. So we had a fantastic time.
Good.
All right, great job. All
Let
right.
me see. I didn't do anything too much on Saturday, but yesterday, my great niece turned 4 years old. So we went out to Chuck E. Cheese and celebrated her. She was a preemie, and the doctors had actually given up on her. And here she is 4 years later, just so lively and just so beautiful. So we just celebrated her on yesterday.
Oh,
So had a really, really good time.
that was sweet.
That's good.
Yeah, shout out to Layla May.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, epic. We've heard from Lady G. We've heard from Cousin Maze. She just can't shed that cousin part, but we know it's Maze, but we have to call her Cousin Maze. We've heard from Cousin Maze. How about you, Epic? How was your weekend?
I had a dynamic weekend myself. I enjoyed every minute of it. I did a little labor at a garage sale.
Oh,
Good.
Just, getting rid of some stuff because it started getting cold. So I had to go up to the attic and get some electric blankets. You know how you got to get your heavy comforters out there for those 40-degree mornings. So I was doing that. But, and then I got to note that the time is changing. When is the time changing, y'all? November?
This weekend. Actually, this weekend.
Is it this weekend?
weekend.
So,
okay.
so I just use that as a symbolic thing. As seasons change, we got to be prepared for those seasons to change. So start moving some things around. So I'm also starting my cleansing. So moving things around internally.
Cleansing. Oh, okay. Not the cleansing of the house, the cleansing of yourself.
We're all together.
All together. All right. Women love men who can clean, Epic.
I'm a maintainer.
Well, I have to say I had a great weekend this weekend. I was able to attend a domestic violence conference. We've had conferences go on through the entire month of October because we know this is domestic violence month, awareness month. And I had an opportunity to go to the Journey of Faith Christian Fellowship with Elder McLeod and his wife. She says just to call her Macy, not to call her First Lady, but they had a dynamic 3-day revival dealing with domestic violence. And I had an opportunity to give a testimony at that conference, and it was awesome. It was really spirit-filled, and it was very informative, and it just made my weekend. You talked about some church on a Saturday night. It was great. That's going to lead us into, we have some special guests here tonight. Let's give our guests a hand, guys. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to say everyone's name, and I just want to say I'm extremely excited you guys are here tonight because, I am excited about all the possibilities that we have to empower people and to save lives. I do have my book here, and it's called Beneath the Scar, Rise to Healing. And it's a book that I've written because this is a subject that's so near and dear to me because I am a survivor of domestic violence. And I wrote this book. It was birthed from God into my heart and out of my heart so that I can share with other people. And my hope is that if I can just save one life, if I can just keep one person from enduring what I endured, and then there's so many men and women out there who have endured much greater, but regardless if it's subtle or severe, if we can save just one person from having undue stress, because we know there's different types of abuse, and we're going to get into that tonight, or to save their life. Because we have some people on our panel, they are powerful individuals. They have lived, walked, and supported this cause. And that's why I decided to bring them on, because they are very prolific. And they have a lot of things to say. And I want to encourage the conversation crew, if you have some questions as we go along, feel free to go ahead and ask those questions while we have our guest here. And we're going to start with introductions. We first have Miss Rosalind Rayford, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. And then we have Detective Michael. You know, I know your last name. Michael Carroll. I know
you know.
Detective Michael Carroll. And then we have Officer Chris Simmons. Okay, I do know names, guys. I just have to remember them. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Simmons. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to come back to Miss Rosalind, and then we're going to go to Detective Carroll. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how it relates to domestic violence.
I'm Officer Chris Simmons. I'm with the Fort Worth Police Department, and tomorrow is my actual retirement date.
We see you smiling over there.
Yes,
Congratulations.
I actually hit 25 years tomorrow.
All right, awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
Another
much.
day, honey.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
Yes, he is. He's not retired.
Well, you know what? It's hard to give it up when you mention, like you said, when you care, when you're trying to,
Yes.
do so much and all. It's hard to walk away from it. I've been in several assignments and all, and I'm working in the detective office at this time right now. And
Okay.
I handle a lot of our harassment cases that eventually turn to family violence, if not addressed sooner and all. Try to nip things in the bud and try to keep them from becoming homicides. And I've worked in a variety of places and all. Just so much. I just can't think of everything I've done, but I've enjoyed it. And,
Wow.
But my passion is to prevent injuries of any kind, whether it's a car wreck, family violence, anything like that. And I'll say this before I stop talking, that I was just telling my partner, Mike here, about when I first got on the police department, how much I looked up to him. I admired Mike and all, being in homicide,
Okay.
So he just inspires me in ways he just doesn't even know and all. So, and I just thank Mike for just taking me in and all and carrying me along. I appreciate it, Mike.
Guys, I have a heart for, I'm going to say this for a moment, I have a heart for police officers because Mr. Detective Carroll, you and I, and Mr. Simmons, we had this conversation. My father-in-law was one of the 3 first African-American police officers on the force in Fort Worth. Remember we talked about that? And there's a special place in my heart because when Dad was with us, just a joy that we would see anytime that he and his fellow police officers, the retired police officers, would get together, and just knowing the work that they did, especially being African-American police officers, and the first, they all 3 got sworn in together, if I'm not mistaken, on the same day as the first African-American police officers in Fort Worth. So we hold you guys in high esteem for the work that you do.
Thank
and
you.
so I'm going to come back to you, but we're going to go over now to Lady Miss Rosalind. Would you like me to call you Rosalind tonight, or Miss Rayford? Okay, we're going to talk with Rosalind, and just give us a little overview of who you are. Tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. My name is Rosalind Rayford. I'm born and raised here in the Dallas area. I grew up in the Fraser Courts housing development, and of course, my passion for domestic violence came through experience indirectly with my parents, and then just cycle repeating, on college campus, domestic violence, it's not reported for so many reasons, such as, rape for so many reasons is not reported. And so I just kind of tinkled with the program. Lip Gloss for Love is the name of my nonprofit organization. And what we do is we educate, raise awareness, and teach the prevention of domestic violence. And we start with our youth, because our youth will grow up to be adults. And if we can catch it in their youth years, then it's a greater chance that as adults, they have the education and the wherewithal to prevent becoming a victim of domestic violence.
Wow, profound. We're going to get into a lot of things before the night is over, so thank you so very much,
Great.
Rosalind. And okay, we're going to Detective Carol. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to tell you all where I met these two, but Detective Carol, go ahead.
First, let me say that early in my career, we have a black organization in Fort Worth, and we have a black police officer association now. But early on, it was called Brown Cooper Crane after your father-in-law, because they were the first black officers hired, and that's what we named the organization back in the 80s. I worked for Fort Worth PD for 33 years. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you all. But for Fort Worth PD, I worked for 33 years. Most of it was as a homicide detective. And years ago, probably 15, 16 years ago, myself and another officer named Rick Benson started a program called Protecting Lives. And it's a safety presentation for women primarily focusing on domestic violence. And we've been very successful with this for 15 years. 7 years ago, so he backed out. And so I've been doing it by myself for the last 7. And it's been very helpful. I also do one for officers. We do a 4-hour presentation for law enforcement to educate them about the laws, the way the laws have changed, so they could make a better decision and understand the lethality risk if they see certain signs on these calls, what they should do, because the risk for these victims are elevated significantly. And I know Raza mentioned something about kids being present. Whether you're a victim of it or you simply see it or witness it, numbers vary, but about 50% of the time, 95% of the time, kids witness this type of offense. And when they do, they're 8 times more likely to perpetrate that same type of crime against someone in their later life.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this is the reason why we need to educate children and educate adults and educate law enforcement to do a better job of putting kind of like the term Chris used, nipping this in the bud kind of approach. But thank you for having me.
That's interesting, because I met the two of you all were empowering students when I met you. I met you at high school, and you were talking to a classroom of students and talking about specific things about domestic violence. And I met you at a forum held by the city of DeSoto, talking to a group of adults, but also talking to a group of youth. And I met you. You guys are like the dynamic duo, like Batman and Robin, Tonto, and who was that? Lone Ranger. So you see one, you see the other. So I met you two at that forum held by the city of DeSoto. So I know that around our community and around the United States that we are really bringing forth the light in regards to domestic violence. And I want to first start off because talking about what is your definition of domestic violence, because people see it different ways. And I can even ask our show co-host too, what is your definition of domestic violence, Ms. Rosalind?
Any aggressive behavior in an intimate partner relationship.
Any
aggressive behavior in an intimate partner relationship.
Wow.
That's verbal, nonverbal, physical, spiritual, financial, any aggressive behavior.
Any aggressive behavior.
Yes.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, officer.
I would agree with that, that it can be, and I think the most important thing is sometimes, though, it may not be necessarily aggressive. I mean, sometimes we do these things and they're very subtle. And if you've lived that life, you know that sometimes these guys can smile at you and they can say things that can be very cutting. And so that, as you said a minute ago, it could be mental, it could be financial, it could be emotional. But the most important thing is we need to educate people about, and you said also about children, because it affects kids, and I've seen as early as 13. And so we do the same presentation we do for high school girls and college girls. And it can affect them early on, but it could be very subtle sometimes too. It starts off very subtle, and then it builds up to something more aggressive. But it's painful either way.
Yes.
And I want to add, there's one, I know we talked about psychological abuse, we talked about financial abuse, and we talked about domestic abuse in relations to physical abuse. And also verbal abuse. But one of the things that people don't think about, sometimes we have spiritual abuse. Sometimes you may have people who aren't within the same faith, or it may even be denomination. And their partner may be of one denomination or another faith, and they may have problems with them going to church or going to the synagogue or going to the mosque because it's different from where they are, or they may not go and not want their partner to go, and they can have all type of repercussions because of even trying to go to church. Would you guys agree with that?
I do agree.
I agree, and I would add something to it. Sometimes it could be within the same denomination, because I've seen it where they will misinterpret the words of the Bible. So I've seen men twist the words a little bit to let the woman know, you are under me. And they will say things in such a way that can be just as painful. And that also comes back to be very deadly. So
Exactly.
yes.
And being in the schools, I know Epic and I can talk on this one, and Cousin Mays. Another form of abuse that's growing is social abuse. We're seeing it all over Facebook. We're seeing it on Twitter. We're seeing it on Snapchat, where especially young teens and young adults, they're putting things out on the internet that things are so abusive. And it's just a fine line to what's going on. And a lot of these things, you know, it gets into moral turpitude when you really look at the magnitude of it. So that's one of the things that's a growing thing, because everybody in the world knows what's going on with someone's business on Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram. And I don't know what's caused that. I guess it's just the social media revolution that we have going on. So does anyone have anything to say about that? Any comments about that? This social abuse, social media abuse. Anyone want to make a comment about that?
Well, I'll say something. I'll say something in terms of the legality of it, because a lot of these kids, and we talk to kids, I do a lot of speaking with kids at high schools, and they have to understand is that as kids, you take a picture of your girlfriend at 16 or 15 years old, and then you pass it on to your friends. You know, as adults, we have these intimate moments, and how many times have we seen movie stars come back and are haunted by some relationship they've been involved with, and somebody has pictures, and they post them all over the internet as we're getting back at their ex-lover. Well, kids do the same thing. Kids will take these pictures of themselves, or the girlfriend will send the boyfriend a picture of herself with no clothes, and then the boyfriend will pass it on to all their friends. These are crimes. And sometimes these kids are convicted of child porn, and then sometimes are registered as sex offenders. So we have to educate children is to be careful with social media. And we've also seen, I'm sure most of it, if you follow the internet at all, you've seen, I remember in Ohio there was a football team and a couple of football players who sexually assaulted a woman at a party. A young high school girl who had been drinking. And they literally carried her from party to party. You see them carrying her by arms and feet, and each one molesting her. And this is why they were convicted, because they recorded all of this and put it on social media. So these things can be dangerous, and they need to understand the ramifications of what can happen to you long term by doing this stuff. You have to be careful with social media.
Oh, wow. Why don't you, Ms. Rosling, do you want to tell of any situations you know that's been a severe situation in regards to a domestic abuse issue that you're aware of?
Yes, we Lip Gloss for Love actually just had our annual brunch that we culminate our year for the month of October. And there was a young lady there that actually has a nonprofit organization named Dove, Daughters of Violence Empowerment. And she told her story about how her abuser met her at work and shot her 3 times. And the last time he shot her in the head. And she fell and just pleaded with God that she wasn't ready. God, I'm not ready to go. And so this young man circled her, and she heard him circling her, and placed his feet on her back, and she stopped breathing so that he was assured that she was dead. So he removed his feet and circled again, and she could hear him, and he placed his feet on her back again to assure that she was dead, and she stopped breathing. Well, maybe seconds later, she heard a gunshot, and he fell at her feet where he had committed suicide. And so it's so surreal, because this woman is absolutely beautiful. She has no defects, physical, that we can see. But internally, the files that continue to not collect dust, because she'll never, ever forget this, is very impactful. And she is just so bold to share this story, because so many times we don't share because, first, it's embarrassing. What are people going to say about me? What are they going to think about me? I'm being abused, I'm being beaten, and I won't leave. So many times we can say on the outside that it's so easy to leave. Just leave. That's so easy for us to say because we don't know what the restraints are on the inside of the relationship.
Okay, you know what? I have someone who just said, because we do social media, Cousin Mays and myself, I have someone who's trying to call in 972-882-6146. You can call in that number, 972-882-6146. Or if you know any of us on the station, you can call us on our phone and we'll plug you through. If you have any questions or concerns for our guests, we'll go ahead and take those calls. So, did you finish your comment?
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt. Okay, Officer Carroll, did you want to add to that while we're waiting on the calls? I have a call that came in. Let me put this call online, okay?
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is Jamie.
Yes, this is.
Okay, this is Dr. Simone. Jamie, I want to say thank you so very much for calling in. I know you know Miss Roslyn.
Hi, I do. Hi, Roslyn.
Hey, Jamie!
Lip gloss for love representing.
Yes. Well, thank you for calling.
Yes.
Thank you for calling in, Jamie. You have a question for tonight, or do you want to add to the conversation?
I can do both, but I would like to ask my question, and I don't know if you all may be able to answer, but I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it.
Okay, go ahead.
Why do you think that the government does not pay enough attention to mental health issues, given that a lot of people that are arrested for domestic violence, have these type of issues?
Okay, who wants to take that question?
The government is doing a better job. As a matter of fact, Fort Worth just started a mental health unit, and they deal with some of the issues that these individuals have to address it. So they put together, you know how many officers are involved in that? My son is one of them, I believe. But they put together a number of officers to go out and find a way to address these individuals' issues, mental issues, to get them help, to see if we can prevent it from that aspect of the crime.
Okay.
Are the officers, do you know if the officers are trained to recognize a person when they're responding to these domestic violence calls? Are the officers trained to recognize when a person is having a mental health issue?
As a matter of fact, all officers, no matter where you train, you receive some type of training dealing with mental health patients or individuals. So all of us get that basic training in the academy. But the ones they selected for these units, over their years of experience, they've gone on to take other types of training, gone to school to learn more things about this particular area. So they've selected officers who have a passion for that so they can go into the unit and hopefully do a better job of trying to manage individuals who have those issues. But I will say this, though. I think anyone who assaults or rapes someone is not normal. But I don't know, in my experience, that most of them have had mental health issues. In my experience, I've only had a few that had really suffered some type of mental health problem. Most of them were just sick people.
Wow. Wow. Anybody else want to make any comments? Okay, Mr. Jamie, we have a. Okay, how about you guys?
This one.
Now that was a question. They don't have a comment for that one, Miss Jamie. But do you have another question or comment that you would like to make?
One more question. In regards to the LGBTQ community, why aren't their issues as far as domestic violence being paid attention to, like, I guess, straight couples?
Well, they actually are. They actually are. In 2016, as a matter of fact, most of Texas and most of the country, we now count them. That's the reason why in Tarrant County they have a unit called the IPV unit. You mentioned interpersonal violence, or intimate personal violence anyway, but They have a unit now called IBP because they now include same-sex relationships in the numbers. And that's the reason why, if you look at our stats, the number of men who have been killed from 2016 to today has gone up slightly because now we're including same-sex relationships in our numbers and statistics.
Do you know about what percentage of men?
Yes. Now it's around 15% of men who are killed, of individuals who are killed in domestic violence relationship or personal relationships. The number used to be lower because we didn't count men, same on same sex. Now we do, so the number is now around 15%, 85% women, 15% men.
Right. I heard just 3 and 5 with those relationships as far as the amount of abuse that occurs, and I think it was 2 and 5 with heterosexuals, somewhere I read, but I don't know. That didn't break up the types of relationships, though.
Yeah,
the information I have.
statistically, the numbers have hovered around, in terms of just assaults and domestic violence assaults, they've hovered around 91 to 93% women and
Wow, that's
7 to
staggering.
9% men.
Yeah.
It's drastically more on the part of women being victims. Now, because of 2016, those numbers will probably change quite a bit, because now over the years we're starting to gather more information about same sex. So now we're going to have more men on men type situations, and it's going to go up slightly. So yes.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Any other questions, Jamie?
I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing to bring light to the issue of domestic violence in our community.
Okay. Why don't you say a nice shout out for Rosalind and what she does in regards to working with high school students. I know you have a second to talk about that real quick, and then we're going to take the next caller.
Oh my God, Rosalind is so phenomenal. She is so passionate about bringing domestic violence issues to the forefront of our communities and educating our youth. She often says when she comes and speaks at different forums that I have at my school, she often says that it starts with our youth. If we were to teach our youth, how to have healthy relationships, then, they won't have these problems as adults. And I just appreciate everything that Rosalind does. She's a powerful woman in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. She's doing a lot of work in the South Dallas community as far as her goals for bringing forth a domestic violence shelter program over there. She's just a phenomenal woman all the way around.
All right. Thank you so very much. I knew you had some good kudos for Rosalind, and she's going to talk about that work in a little bit later, too. So thank you for calling in, Jamie.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to any calls that we may have. Again, 972-882-6146. In the meanwhile, I'm going to open the floor up to our conversation crew, Epic, Lady G, or Cousin Mays. Why don't you guys go ahead? You have questions for any of our panelists. Let's go ahead and shoot out some questions.
I do. I want to know. I know that it's, we talk a lot about the women that get abused. You have a lot of reports of men as well. And do they have a shelter for men? There's no shelter for men?
There is a shelter.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
There is a shelter for men. The Family Place has the first shelter for men.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't say because now we have a shelter for men that reports are new.
Okay.
Reports have been very subtle throughout the years. However, they were laughed at. Where am I going to go? I can't go to my mom's house. Can't go to my homeboy's house. Can't go to my sister's house. They'll make a mockery. So now they have a safe place that they can go, because women are just as aggressive as men are. It's not a one-way thing. This is a shared disease that's out there, and it's called domestic violence.
Good question. Any other questions?
Well, I got to spin off of a previous conversation we had last week. Last week we said, when is enough enough? So where is that line? How do you, and how much responsibility does your family and your colleagues or whoever is identifying this, if you don't know where that line is enough, when does intervention come in? So those are my questions I have for the panelists here. When is enough enough?
I think enough is enough has been here for a while. I think what's happened in the last 10 or 15 years, though, they say it takes a village, and that's what's been happening here, because you have to change the mindset. And we say it's not a one-way thing, but for the most part, most of the predators, we call them predators in my presentation, most of our suspects have been men, and so few have been women. And at some point, as men, we have to stop taking that personally and having an attitude about it, but accept the fact that this is, the numbers bear this out,
Right.
and we need to do something to stop it.
The numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie.
Right.
But all too often, we get our feelings hurt when someone says that, and we get angry about it. And it carries over into police officers and how we do our jobs. Because Chris would tell you, we've all seen officers who say, well, you know, what am I going to waste my time doing this? And she'll just drop the charges, and what's the point? Well, but because of organizations like the one you're involved in now, the fact that we're doing what we're doing today, this has been going on now for the last 15 years. And as a result, laws have changed. And it's because of involvement, external forces put on the government. And so what's happened is, we were having this conversation earlier, when I was a young officer, if I went to a call and I had a woman who was severely beaten, unless she wanted to pursue the charges, or unless I saw it take place, or he made a comment he's going to further the offense or the assault once I left, our hands were tied. But over the years, because of what's going on here, this conversation we're having, it's been going on for the last 15 years. And because of it and the pressure put on the government, law started to change. Then it changed to, if we get there, the law now says an officer, once he arrives on a scene and sees evidence there's an assault, in domestic violence cases only. Because there's very few cases you can arrest on misdemeanors. This is one. But the law says you may make the arrest. Fort Worth, our policy is you shall make the arrest. If you see evidence of it, you will make the arrest and you will file the case.
Wow.
That's our department. Then the law changed in 2003. If you assault a woman who's pregnant, I don't care if she's 1 day pregnant, that's a capital murder.
Wow.
Punishable by life or death.
Let's talk about that for a minute, too, because a couple of things came out. The first thing is we talked about shelters for men. We talked about that, and I know there's shelters for women who have children. I know Wise Casa is an organization that provides shelter for women who don't have children, who are single. And I know Mr. Mel does a great job of doing that and supporting the community. I know, just like we have the assistance from Lip Gloss for Love and other organizations, Woman Called Moses, different organizations throughout the DFW Metroplex and around the United States that are really working to help women. But I thought it was kind of unique to find a place that women could go if they don't have children, because single women need a place to go. And we talked about that, and I hear you talking about the domestic violence and all the things that are going on, but it's quite interesting about, I've heard a term, I think it was called the blue wall. The blue wall, is that correct? The blue wall?
I've never heard of that. But
Where I think it's been coined that years ago it used to be, and I have people that I know who have been married to police officers, or people who've had testimonies who, not to knock the police, but who were married to police officers, and they're divorced now, and they are survivors of domestic abuse. And I've heard horrific stories about women being stomped in the head, about officers coming to homes and just turning their backs and not doing anything about it, as though nothing happened. And I do believe it's called the blue wall or something to that effect. And not just officers, and I'm not knocking any group of people or organization. The same thing I've heard in regards to people in the military, the percentage of individuals who are abused. A lot of times, especially when people go overseas and they're isolated from their families and they are victims of abuse, because they feel as though they have nowhere to go or anyone to turn to, especially in some of the countries that women are treated as though they're second-class citizens. And so with that country's culture, if a man beats his wife, nothing happens. So let's go back to come back to the United States, and I've heard that over the years. So are things being done? I hear you say the laws have changed, so things are being done now. Is that just for Texas, or is that around the U.S., or what?
This is around the U.S., but let me say this about police and military. Sometimes we make
not to give the police a bad name.
No. But you saw my presentation. In my presentation, I talk about the fact that, you know, we have a way of trying to justify or make excuses for a person's behavior. There is no excuse for that. And it doesn't matter what job you have, because there are thousands of military folks and police that don't do this. But what police departments are doing now, for instance, you cannot hold a license and be a police officer if you ever are convicted of even a simple assault. If it's family violence, they'll take your license. And most departments, I know Fort Worth has, we have units that we deal with just those type of issues. And we target and look for, if we have those issues come up with officers, we fire them if we can. But here's the problem we've always had. You get an officer who's, or any citizen, because it doesn't matter what you do, we arrest you for family violence. Then why is the charge always dropped? Well, the charge is always dropped because typically in the years prior to now, if the victim didn't come forth to testify against the offender, there's nothing they could do. They said, look, we need this person as a witness to come forth and testify. So the laws have changed again. We're leading up to laws changing. And recently the laws have changed now that under certain circumstances, I do not need her to testify. So if I can show that this is what this person did and this victim's going through, and I was at Tarrant County meeting with them a few months ago, and they had a conviction, a 15-year sentence on a case where previous to this, the case would have been thrown out because the victim testified against the DA's office for the defendant in court, and he was still convicted and sentenced to 15 years in the pen. So this stuff is changing, and it's changing because of this kind of conversation.
Okay, very good.
So
We're going to come back. We're going to take a break, and I know there's two topics I want to discuss, and the crew, our team, may have some other questions for you all, and we're going to talk about your expertise and what you do. But I want to look at this thing. We talked about the percentage of women, that women are more likely sometimes to be abused when they are pregnant. And then I want to talk about, it just goes around my book. I was a victim of abuse. I'm a survivor now. In my young years as a young teenager and in college. And so it's something that colleges are working to support. I serve as an adjunct professor of graduate studies right now, but I know many universities have programs just for this reason. So we're going to talk about those two things when we come back, and I'm going to give the guests a little more time to talk about their expertise in the area and the things that you do to support the community. I think that we need to make sure we talk about some of the resources that we have in the community so that we can empower people. So we're going to go to break in a few moments, but when we come back, we want to encourage callers to call in 972-882-6146, and we're going to have our crew, our team, to talk about some other questions that they have as well. Thank you so much, and we're going to take a commercial break.
It's something special. Sit back and listen. There's something special to me. Yeah. This one's for you. You gave me a reason to chart. You are the reason I stand strong. Whenever I fall, you been the one I can lay a dawn. But ever since fall, I love's been shine like a sandstorm. I know I was wrong, but you kept singing the same song about what we can't afford. I ignore what they hate me for. I fell asleep on the shore where I can't escape the poor. That's not what I hated more. I know I might fail, but mama, I'm not afraid of loss. So if it's a price to pay, it's time that I pay the cost. Like these are my faded thoughts. I love you like the soulmate of my sacred heart. One love. Through the sun and rain, the joy and pain, family matters in the world never change. I love you, mama, I do. I love you, mama, I do. Through the sun and rain, the joy and pain, family matters in the world never change. I started off with just the ice in my veins, now I got ice in my chain. Family matters in the world never change. Family matters, matters. It don't matter how the wind blow, you stay down like 10 toes. You taught me family matters like Jaleel White and Winslow. So even though my wind's low, I'm still a champ to you. The struggle is a journey that a hero must pursue. To activate his dreams and plans to make cream. Show the world one life, one love, and one team. For the girls from the 414 to race scene. You don't gotta be bees and hoes and be seen. You don't gotta be down the fuck at 16 or a queen. It's a girl who fought no God's lead. Straight up. the sun and rain, the joy and pain. Family matters and that will never change. I love you, mama, I do. I love you, mama, I do. Through the sun and rain, the joy and pain. Family matters and that will never change. I started off with just the ice in my veins, now I got ice in my chain. Family matters and that will never change. I said, family matters. I pick apart the broken pieces in the words you're speaking. Recognize the vibe I'm feeding in these written thesis. Yeah, you know the white man will keep the vulture eating, but you know that Leo season keep the culture breathing. So it don't matter how many of y'all think I'm the greatest of my generation, I'm still a neighborhood favorite. The whole hood waving cause they understood Caleb when he had the all even with the sides tapered. Now my eyes slow, Asian basketball deflated, still dream chasing, face it. It's time to say goodbye, SoundCloud, Spotify's waiting on. Through the sun and rain, the joy and pain. Family matters and that will never change. I love you, mama.
I miss you, baby.
I love you, mama.
I swear I do.
Hey. And this is that underground, that basement shit, yeah. This for my little sister, my mother, first place, and all my brothers, straight up. Oh yeah. Blessings to family, poverty let me see honor in those who care for me. The city stuck on my shoulders, I hold it carefully. I do this shit for my soldiers who want the best for me. This is a ghetto melody. Fuck them niggas who slept on me, and fuck them bitches who come and kick it and call me gifted. When I was timid, they acted distant cause I was different. But now you see me growing up and y'all don't wanna miss it. A little ironic, I'm smoking that chronic. Yup, I'm rubbing hypnotic, I'm feeling iconic. Yup. So me and that kid, we gon' get it. Me and Andre, we gon' get it. As long as you stay consistent, as long as you making a difference, as long as you dream, you can wake up and live it. This that new home, back and forth between two homes. Neither one of them yours, but you tell your girl this your new home. Really, she know you're lying, but deep inside you are trying. So when it's your turn to shine, she'll tell you what's yours is mine. Yeah. Really, I'm kidding, no, really, I'm not. Really, I'm stuck, guess I'm stuck in a box, trying to bite off the lock. I'm eating these beats instead. Wanna feed these streets, really all I need is a piece of bread. But bet, if I'ma change for the better. I love the sunshine, but it can't shine forever. If ever it should rain, we'll get rained on together. Cause you have been a friend to me. You have been a friend. This for the kids from the mill to Chicago. The present is a gift, but the kids are tomorrow. I'm trying to make sense of a world full of sorrow. So promise you'll be there for me. I promise I'll be there for you. If I'ma change for the better. I love the sunshine, but it can't shine forever. If ever it should rain, we'll get rained on together. Cause you have been a friend to me. You have been a friend to me. This for the kids from the mill to Chicago. The present is a gift, but the kids are tomorrow. I'm trying to make sense of a world full of sorrow. So promise you'll be there for me. Now everybody say rags to riches, rags to riches. I know I could get it if I push it to the limit. I say rags to riches, rags to riches. I know I could get it if I push it to the limit. Ay, rags to riches, rags to riches. I know I could get it if I push it to the limit. Ay, rags to riches, rags to riches. I know I could get it if I push it to the limit. Ay, if I'ma change. Hey, y'all remember? And it's alright, I'll never change. And let's bring it back, let the beat ride. Just let it ride. Good times must rise. And promise you'll be there for me. Sometimes I'll be there for you. This for the kids. You can't be afraid to be yourself. The present is a gift. It's the only way you can ever be real. Trying to make sense of them. So promise. And that's that underground basement shit. That basement shit. Coming to you live. The 817 to the 414. You know?
Welcome back to High Vibe, the conversation with our co-host Epic, Lady G, Cousin Mays, and myself, Dr. Simone, and we're glad to have our guest here, Mr. Simmons, Officer Simmons, Detective Carol, and our very own Miss Rayford. So we're here talking about domestic violence tonight. We're talking about quite a few things, and when we left off, we talked about the high percentage of women who are pregnant and abused. Is that not something, guys? I mean, can you imagine? You know, and I've heard of that happening. Has anyone heard about a pregnant woman being abused? I know of someone who told me that before years ago, and I was just amazed. I was like, what? How can somebody hit you and you're pregnant? It's just I can't even fathom that. But anybody want to talk about that? Cousin Mays and Miss Gloria, Lady G. Epic.
To me,
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
the lowest of the low, you know, because I think just, you know, with the kingdom, even the animal kingdom, I think that there's an automatic protective order that goes in place when you see someone bearing a child. You know, I think that even a lion would kind of be yielded when she comes around, lioness, and she's pregnant and being up. So to think that, to me, it's really mental. You got to be off the rocks. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I think you got to be off the rocks in order not to even notice and recognize life within a life. You know, because really you're not even recognizing the life because you're seeing this person and you're so twisting your mentality that you're dehumanizing someone, and you can let that violence then be projected upon them because you don't even see that person of value because you don't really value their life. So certainly you don't really notice the life that this mother is bearing. Because there's different roles. It's not just your girlfriend, your wife, but this is a mother that's bearing life. And so for you not to recognize, that's the lowest of the low.
Wow. How about you, Lady G?
I'm going to say that the violence that is portrayed with, you know, with domestic violence, it does deteriorate us, and it makes us feel that we're not worthy. So when we have things like this come into our lives, especially if we are with child, that is like a sacred time. You know, that's God. He gave us that life, and for someone to come and to hurt you, I just think that it's just a terrible thing that the person that is doing it, they're not thinking of the value of you and the life that you are carrying, and that's just a horrible thing. Just a horrible thing.
Cousin Mays?
Just a tough conversation.
I'm not really sure what is going on nowadays. And to be in a dating scene, I tell y'all, emotional abuse is real bad. It's very subtle, but it's really bad and it's very prevalent. And it makes me wonder, when you meet somebody for the first time, how nice and charming the person can be, but then it seeps out, it comes out.
The real them shows
The
up.
real deal shows up. And you have to say, wait a minute, especially if you have your self-worth, know who you are, and have boundaries. And you're like, what is going on? And you dress that, but then you get to learn who that person is. And sometimes they tell you their story. And it's unbelievable, men and women. And you wonder why marriages fail. You wonder why the children are having issues at school or having dysfunctional relationships later, or even disabilities. People don't realize that when you stay in that type of marriage or that relationship, how it impacts the children at school. Epic, Dr. Simone, myself, and I'm sure the rest of you all can kind of vouch on this. I've seen children crying, can't even pay attention at school. Sometimes don't even want to leave school. Very fearful, hungry, putting food in their backpack, not coming clean, just all kinds of things. And this affects their academics, affects them socially too. And not to mention the bullies that the kids do in school when they tease other kids because of what's going on. So this is a very serious issue. This is a very serious issue, and I just kind of want to ask a question for our guests. What are the chances of children that see this and stay in this? What is kind of the statistics on them repeating this same cycle?
Do you have stats on that, Ms.
Or
Wilson?
just-
You
I
know,
know you work with youth.
not these not stats that you can pull up. I'm gonna take this off the head. I'm gonna give it a great percent. I'm gonna say at least 90 to 97% of the children that witness it, there is some type of repeated offense, be it the perpetrator or be it the victim. Perfect example. And I use this little guy's name. I hope somebody named Jonathan doesn't call me, but I always use Jonathan. Remember in the kindergarten, Jonathan pulled Keisha's hair. Keisha go tell the teacher. What does the teacher say? Oh, Jonathan just like you. Go back and play. We've just set up two things.
Wow.
Jonathan now knows that my daddy fights my mom, so I pull Keisha's hair. The teacher said it's okay because that's how I show her I like her. Now Keisha thinks because he pulled my hair and the teacher that I'm depending on to protect me away from my parents tells me, oh, he's expressing that he likes you, it's okay for him to pull your hair. So now you got a little girl growing up thinking if he likes me, he'll hit me, he'll pull my hair. And you got a young man stating, my daddy do it, my mama's okay, why can't I do it? And that's how I express my feelings for someone.
Statistically,
Wow.
kids who just witness this type of assault go on in their house, not involved, not personally attacked, just witness it, they are 8 times more likely to perpetrate that type of violence on someone else in their life when they grow up. 8 times. And what you talked about relationships and dating early on, I think this is something that we were talking about during the break, is that we need to educate our daughters better. We need to, and that comes from fathers.
Yes.
We need to be present to establish that kind of relationship and let them know they have value. Because as a community, worldwide, women's lives have been less valuable to us. That's just a fact. And so because of that, think about this. As a man, if I'm married or single and I have 15 girlfriends on the side, how do you look at me? A playboy, a player. How do I look at you if you do the same thing? How do we look at you if you're never married, never have kids? Don't we put pressure on you like you're less valuable to the world unless you're married and have children? We could stay single our whole lives and that's okay. You can't do that. So these are things that we need to change, that whole mindset about how we condition fathers and girls and men in our lives. It has to change because it's important. And going back to deaths, because I've worked a lot of deaths. I've worked a lot of children's deaths in domestic violence cases, and it's not pretty. It never gets pretty. And this is something you mentioned something a minute ago about how do we, when you see this type of ugliness, I'm trying to think of the question you said specifically because it was a good point I wanted to make on that one.
Was it Lady G? Who was it?
It was
Epic.
Was it enough is enough? When do
No.
we intervene? Intervention?
No, I hate when I miss stuff like this because it's such a good point. It'll come back to me. I'm sorry.
Okay. You know, and I think about that thing. I was thinking about also college. I was a survivor of domestic abuse. I think about a situation where, my book is Beneath the Scar, Rise to Healing. And I remember a situation myself, and people say, well, why do you do that? Why do you do that? And I tell people all the time, don't say what you won't do, because you never know. And don't judge someone's situation because you may say, well, I wouldn't. You never know what's behind it and what's driving it. Unless you are in their very shoes, don't ever say it. I know a young lady told me the other day, she used to say, oh, people were stupid for staying in domestic violence. And then one of her coworkers pulled her aside and said, honey, if you're going to go out advocating, you cannot say that someone was stupid for staying. You don't know what they're going through. With me, there was fear, there was shame, there was embarrassment. My own father left this earth in 2008, and he did not even know. I had a book signing in September. My brother didn't find out until September. And so, and with that, you know, with the book, there had to be an awakening from me, too, and say, yes, I am a survivor. And it was mixed then, and then some of it was, I was fearful. I was so embarrassed, and I just couldn't believe that I allowed myself to get into that type of situation. And I knew if my daddy found out, my daddy would have been in prison because he would have killed somebody. And I know for a fact, and I'm not just saying this, my daddy would have killed somebody. You know, he would have killed them. And so, not to protect the perpetrator, but when you're in a situation and all of a sudden someone grabs you by your neck. I'm 105 pounds or less. And they grab you by the neck and they take you and hold you over their lap. And then my face was down on the ground in a car that was moving, going 40, 50 miles an hour. And I call it the 6-inch rule in the book, where my face was 6 inches from the ground. And all I could do was just fear for my life. And you see pavement below your face. And I was talking to someone this morning, and we were talking about how it goes from subtle to severe. And there are other things that were more severe than that. But I told the person, I said, but what about a what if? You know, because they told me, well, I was a survivor of domestic abuse, but I didn't have to deal with it like some women. I said, but what if this person, if they had hit you and they could have made you have a stroke, they could have killed you with a blow to the head, you could have been a what if. Luckily, or not luckily, you were blessed in that it didn't happen to you. I was blessed that my face was only 6 inches above the ground and my face did not hit the ground. Okay? And so people have things to say, but I think it's time to turn away from the victim and turn toward the abuser, and what can we do to support the abusers? I mean, because I know some people abuse and they do it a lifetime and it gets worse, it gets worse. Because I have a friend at Bloomfield years ago, we came from Arkansas, and she had an abusive husband, and she said, I gotta go, I gotta leave him. She says, I think he's going to kill me. And lo and behold, he marries another woman, and on this woman's 40th birthday, he goes into the bathroom and shoots her in the head on her 40th birthday. And my friend's just like, I knew it. I just knew something was going to happen. It could have been me, you know, but everybody has their own time and place, but some people talk about, well, just get out. And sometimes it's not so simple. Sometimes, you know, I've seen statistics that say women who get protective orders or get restraining orders, within 48 hours, 50% of those women, they're either accosted by the abuser and beat, or some of them end up dead, trying to get away. And I want us to talk about some safety plans if you all want to add to some stuff. And think about some movies we've seen where we've seen victims of abuse.
Can I add something first?
And we're going to bring it back to
I
life.
forgot, and that's we're talking about pregnancy. Let me go back to that real quick. That I worked a case, the victim's name was Lisa Underwood, and Oprah wanted myself and the victim's mom to be on her show, and ultimately she wrote an article in her own magazine about this case. And I learned doing that part, and this is 2005, and I learned then the high lethality risk of women who are pregnant. We talked about when you're pregnant, do you know 25% of women are assaulted for the first time in their life when they're pregnant. 31% of women who are killed are pregnant. second only to accidents. Those numbers startled me, talking about the high risk of
Wow.
women who are pregnant. So I can go back to
Oh,
the
wow.
predator.
Okay. Did anyone else want to make any comments? You know, we think about movies that we've seen.
Yeah.
And movies are movies, but they're real. What are some things you guys have
right
seen?
now, I've been watching, well, I haven't watched it here in the last few weeks, but The Green Leaf.
Okay.
And the young girl on there that has the boyfriend, and he's suddenly abusing her in small ways, yanking her, snatching her, and she's getting bruises on her arms. And her mother had came into the room, and she didn't have a shirt on because they were showing her bruises, and she put on a big oversized shirt real quick so her mother wouldn't see it. So I know that she's, hiding it, and she's scared, for her parents to know that it's going on. But I haven't seen episodes of what's been happening with it lately.
Wow.
So, but I know that it does happen. That is going on, and because we're, afraid of, and like you said, embarrassed, really embarrassed about it.
And just
that we
that
let it
fear.
go on.
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear can be in so many different ways.
Yeah.
People, you can be fearful in the midst of it happening.
Yeah.
And then you can be fearful of, what if I do, who can I tell, who can I talk with? And then you have friends who are trying to protect you, and then the person can isolate you from your friends, the person isolates you from your family, and then you're all alone from your church, and you're all alone, and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Were you going to say something, Cousin Mace?
I remember a movie called The Perfect Guy
Mm.
with Sanaa Lathan and Michael Ealy.
Oh.
Have y'all seen that
I
movie?
couldn't watch it.
You couldn't watch
Yeah,
it?
it was late. It was intense, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can't look at it. He's under the bed. He's in the
Oh, I
closet." So
saw
I couldn't.
that.
I had to turn it.
I
I
saw
couldn't
that.
look at it.
Yeah.
I'm
I
a
saw
scared
that.
cat.
I saw that.
That movie, I would tell you, it was so much emotional
Yes.
abuse,
Mhm.
and then it started getting physical.
Mhm.
He was stalking,
Mental.
All
Yes.
the time.
and he was doing all kinds of crazy things, and I couldn't believe it at all because Michael Ealy, that's not his normal character
Mhm.
that he plays.
Right.
But it was really intriguing to see him play this role, and for her to be in a movie like this.
Right.
But that's a perfect example of domestic violence.
I think about Jennifer Lopez in Enough.
Oh
Remember
God.
that?
Oh
Remember that?
yes.
And Enough about how
And when she
her
had
husband
had
stalked her,
enough.
and she had enough.
She
You know,
did.
and then it's amazing because she fought back.
Yeah.
But one of the realities is, a lot of times when women or the other partner decides to fight back, and they do that, and someone ends up being killed,
Yeah.
they end up going to prison, even though they've been abused for years. How does that work?
No, that's
Is
changed.
that just changing?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you for telling
yes.
me, because in
When
the
I-
past it used to be.
Yeah, it used to be. And when I do my presentation at One Safe Place, I'm doing one Thursday. There's a woman I used to have come speak for me. She killed her abuser. And this is back in the 80s, and she tells that story. What happens now is that we've caught up, and we understand it's complicated when someone's abused, mentally and physically. So now we try to document, like in Fort Worth, in most departments, say, even when you go to a domestic violence call where it's just an argument, document it, because at some point, if this woman fights back and kills him, we want all this paper trail to protect the victim. So we do a lot of things now to educate people about the law, and in most cases, so long as it's self-defense, then the odds are that there's not going to be any charges filed. If it's
Okay.
not a flat-out murder.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
let me-
didn't happen.
Let me
That-
say this real quick. We're gonna have some callers come in. I'm gonna let Ms. Rosalind talk in a minute, but we have another number you can call in if you like. 817-680-0782. Again, 817-680-0782. Okay, Ms. Rosalind.
Just wanted to speak on that. I'm so glad that we have caught up because just maybe 7 years ago, my sister-in-law was in an abusive relationship where she fought back, and she was in jail for almost a year.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Where did this take place?
Louisiana, Shreveport, something.
There's some interesting laws in Louisiana.
Yeah,
You know-
it is.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
some very
That's a
interesting
question
laws in
that I like,
Louisiana.
I like to ask, because it impacts our community so much. what happens to the retaliation? You know, I want to tie mine in with a movie. Let's say Diary of a
Mad
Black
Woman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what happens when there retaliation? And even by, like Dr. Simone said, my father would have known. You know, so what happens in our community for cases, and what does retaliation look like in our community? And I was going to ask the officer here.
Go ahead, Mike. You've had this expert here. Hey.
Okay.
It's odd how retaliation works because I have seen cases, and I had a case where I didn't work it, but some detective I know worked it, where a 77-year-old man was wakened at 3 in the morning by his daughter, who was in her 40s, who was beaten by her husband. And when he put her in and called the police, when the husband showed up, he was intoxicated and swearing and telling that BIT to come outside.
Right.
And he winds up shooting the guy. Now, is that a crime? Yes, by definition, that's murder. It wasn't self-defense, it was murder. But this is where the grand jury comes into play. Because the grand jury can look at all those facts and say, yeah, but we're going to find no bill this person.
Right.
So even though what he did, and again, this is where courts and the grand juries come into play, because that can change everything. And I think it comes from a smarter grand jury or a grand jury or a group of lawyer or juror members who say, you know what, enough is enough.
Right.
And they have that attitude, and they may find you not guilty.
And I'm looking at it and thinking how much, I think she said earlier, how we got to educate our youth.
Yes.
And if most of the victim, the perpetrator are men, we got to educate our boys, particularly, to be sensitive. Like even, I know October's breast cancer, basically cancer awareness, breast cancer awareness, but how many guys are just kind of like, well, if you got a sister, you got an aunt, you got a mother, and you're a woman, it matters to you. It should. So we need to be able to, wake them up in a sense. And I know I'm thinking, okay, I better go, because it's your responsibility as to protect your son early on, to bring him up that way, because if he ends up making, a really bad choice based on the lack of training that he has, then it's our responsibility as men.
That's right.
So we got to be able to go in there early on. And so is there forums for young guys to, and I'm thinking, I'm really big with student athletes because they're competitive. Student athletes are competitive.
We're seeing a lot of that in the media too.
Right. Yeah.
So I believe that there needs to be some type of forum, particularly for the student athletes, young student athletes.
We do. We deal with teens, period, young men and women. So we have partnered with Masonic Group Cherubim 237, who actually partners with us to talk with our young men and our women. Because what we need to know is, how does the other sex feel? What does that mean to them? We raise our boys a lot of times that don't cry, don't show emotions, man up. No, there's a time for that. But right now, at 3, this boy needs to be crying.
Yeah.
And you need to be wiping his knees and wiping his face, not telling him to man up. What is that? Because the closest man that he probably sees is not the best man that he sees. So man, that's what it looks like. So now we're repeating that cycle.
And you being an athlete, I was at a seminar years ago with a professional football player, and he said this, and I thought it was very profound, is that it's ironic that the words we use as athletes to each other, male on male, about women is always negative. You throw like a girl, you hit like a girl, you run like a girl, you're the P word. Everything we use about women is always negative. And these young boys grow up with that connotation in their head, so we need to stop that. And I'm going to be honest, my presentation is doing whatever I can to prevent women from being hurt like this. And so I became frustrated with every time I arrest an offender and then they're sent to anger management class or forced to go. Well, you can't force that on somebody. It has to be something you're willing to go to change, as if you were an alcoholic. But you can come from a perfect home with perfect mother and father and still be an abuser. There's no guarantee that because you raised in a perfect home, you're not going to be an abuser. So what I encourage women to do is, and society, is do whatever we can to isolate those individuals, separate them. You said about dating. The one thing we've learned is that when you date someone, if they're an abuser, you'll know it within the first date or two. You'll know the signs, get out at that point.
That's good. That's a good segue right there. So I want to talk about. Do we have a caller, lady? Okay. I want to talk about what are some of the signs. I'm going to ask the crew. What do you all think are some of the signs? And then we'll come back to Mr. Simmons, Officer Simmons, and then we'll come back to, I'm calling you Lady Roslyn, and then we're going to go to Detective Carol. What do you think are some signs? What do y'all think are some signs?
Can I actually speak on that?
Sure.
Make a comment?
Sure.
Just from my experience of dating in my short lifespan, the name and blame game.
Talk about that a little bit more.
A person that doesn't take responsibility of him or herself, and they blame you for everything that's going on wrong with him or her. That's one thing. Something simple as throwing a phone on the floor when they're trying to express their feelings. Or it could be a pillow. It could be a cup. But just throwing it. That's a sign right there.
Okay, Lady G, you can't throw your phone down when you get home. Lady G.
To me, that's scary.
I'm laughing, but I'm serious.
It's
Okay.
just, it's scary. It's different when you're frustrated about something that's going on in your day. But when you're in a heated argument,
I got you, man.
and you get real hot, hit it, and you throw your phone or throw something, that's a sign right there. Because next time that person can take whatever object and throw it at you. It's time to go. That one, for me, one time you do that, I'm out. I don't waste time because
Great
I don't
point.
want to do no what if or oh it's just this time. No, I don't do that. I run. Okay, Speedy Gonzalez, road runner. I'm out.
Have you ever had a situation, if you don't mind answering, Cousin Mays, you ever had a situation like that where you may have dated someone, being a single woman, that you've dated someone that they showed a sign and you just say, oh no, if you don't mind answering.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This was a few months back. And didn't know, charming, nice, sweet. Well, the person had some abuse from his father as a
So
child.
it's just kind of hard. Okay.
And seeing the anxiety, the depression, the stress. And the person could not control his situation.
And so you knew not to get tied up in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lady G.
And just like I had shared last week about my ex-husband, and he had, and alcohol was involved. He had went out, came home, and had bought one of his buddies over like at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, while me and the baby were asleep. And it just kind of like escalated from there, and we ended up getting into an altercation. But I knew that wasn't anything I wanted in my life. And so I was able to walk away that night and never went back. But you know, there's so many women that don't. Maybe they don't have the means to walk away. I mean, I did have to have family send for me. You know, I called his parents, said, you know, I can't do this. You know, this isn't what I signed up for. I didn't know all this was going to be going on, and I was able to, you know, come home. But there's so many, you know, ladies that are not. So I'll ask a question. When there is a domestic call and the officers are called out and they come, and is there, if the woman won't press charges, does the state pick that up, or how does that work?
Yes. And now, what the penal code says is that if the officer sees that there was an assault, the penal code says the officer may arrest.
Okay.
Fort Worth's policy is we shall arrest. So if we see evidence of an assault, we have to make an arrest.
Okay.
And so even if the victim doesn't want to pursue it, we still make the arrest. Now what happens is that we have to file the case as well. The DA has always had the power to drop anything they want to drop. And if the woman is not cooperating, quite often they would drop it. But now the way the laws have changed recently, that the DA can continue even if the woman doesn't want to pursue. They can still continue the case.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, you know, I'm glad you made that point. You were talking about alcohol. I've heard people say, oh, he had too much to drink or she had too much to drink, that's why they abuse. And I've even heard people say, oh, he's under a lot of stress. He works, she's at home, she's not working, and because he's so stressed, I'm just asking about this, it happens. I don't think it's justifiable, stress or no stress, because no one should use anybody else as a punching bag. I don't care how much. Go down to the gym. Go take up boxing.
Exactly.
That doesn't give you the right to punch your wife
Right.
because you're stressed. Or I don't think you should go around the house punching holes in the wall. People punch holes in the wall and they have to go and sheetrock it. I know. I mean, sheetrock.
Yeah.
What's what we talking-
Yeah.
You know, I've known of people who were married and dating, literally.
That's a sign.
And they go and
It is
punch
a sign.
holes
It is
in
a
sign.
the wall.
That is a sign.
Okay? But eventually they're probably going to do it to you.
Absolutely.
They will do it to you.
They will. There is a 100%
Eventually.
chance
Eventually.
that you're next.
Eventually. And so, what do y'all think about that? Oh, he's just stressed. He's working hard. He's supporting the family.
Can I say
Only
this?
one person. I'm just saying. I want to get something going here.
I wanna
Only
say this
one
about
person's
that.
working. They're stressed. They're stressed. I've heard that. So, what do y'all think?
Okay, let
I'm
me
not
say
saying
this
I
about
agree
that.
with it. I'm just
Right,
asking.
Right.
To start, to give a foundation, let me add this in there. Is it normal when an adult has an interest in a child sexually? Is that normal?
That's
No,
perverted.
it's perverted. Is it normal for someone to force themselves on someone else? No.
No, it's perverted.
Are they mentally no, they may not be crazy by definition, but what they're doing isn't normal. Something's wrong with them.
It's abnormal.
So we
yes.
need to treat, in my mind, and I'm not a psychologist, but I treat someone who abuses someone the same way. My foundation is just like I cannot and never will accept an adult having sex with a child, nor will I accept them raping a child or a person. I treat them the same way. There's a sickness up there that, to be quite honest, none of us totally understand. So with that said, there's only one place to me that we should all feel safe, and that's at our home.
Right.
One place. So
I
that's my
agree.
foundation for it.
I agree. I will say this: many times we talk about how the abuse begins. I will say this on behalf of women: we divulge a lot of information early in relationships, which then
So true.
causes the avenue for us to be isolated. Because now, if there's an issue at home, dad is not close, mom is not close. Now I can get in. And I can be manipulative. I can pull away from her friends, you know, and separate her from everybody. And then the real me shows up.
Right.
Well, now because I've been separated and I'm isolated, I don't want to hear, you shouldn't have went. You shouldn't have left. You know, no, stay on over there. Because everybody is not supported. It's almost like a tough love prison, you know, that we're placed into when we just give so much information so soon versus waiting to see who this character really is. But a lot of times we make our own paths because we want to share so much.
I'm going to piggyback on that because that is so important. That's one thing I talk about in my presentation as well. That men and women are different, and that we're not. What she said doesn't matter if the guy is perfect. If he's a nice guy, you use the word charming quite a bit, both of you. And we in my presentation, I say, is he charming or is he trying to charm you? And there's a difference. Is he nice because he's nice, or is he nice because he has some motive?
Right.
If he's nice because he has a motive, then he's going to use that against you, because men don't open up as fast as you all do. You're verbal creatures.
Right.
So you'll say things, and the guy who's trying to charm you will listen, and he'll use that. If you say, I'm worried about my weight, you're stressing over your weight, guess what? That's going to come back to bite you. Because he'll say, and it's, I hate to use this word, but it's a form of brainwashing. No one hits you on the first date or it's over.
Right.
Over time, I say the right things because you said they're charming. They dress nice. They say the right things. We're loving in the beginning. Then it's, you're looking like, You need to go work out. Let's do some walking, right? We'll say that. Like, I'm trying to help you, but I'm saying in a kind of condescending way, euphemistic thing of saying, I'm going to say the kind way of saying a bad thing, but it's, or you have kids, right? So we use that against you when you're trying to do something. It's like, you know, but I'm fat.
Okay, hold on one second.
So then when he hits you, then it's...
Okay. Okay, we have a caller. What is your name? Missy, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm doing great. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Thank you for calling into the conversation.
Okay, my question is, do you think that if a person knew the signs and the things to look for, that they would have a better chance of not getting into that type of relationship?
Yes.
Anyone want to answer that? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Rosalind?
Yes. Hi, Missy.
Hey.
This is Rosalind. I would say this, Missy, we have to be very confident and love ourselves. Because when we don't love ourselves and we're lonely, we'll take anything, whether we see it or not. So we have to be able to conquer our own, I won't say fears, but our own loneliness and neglects. Because what women think, we're made up to change. We'll say, I'll love him to change. I'll be what he wants me to be so that he will change. We believe it with the depths of our soul that we can change this abuser to be an abuser no more. So no matter what type of education we have, the signs that we see, it's right in our face, it's posted on our mirrors every morning. We have to understand that stop means stop.
Right.
Any other questions?
I have to think.
Okay.
Let me say it while she's
Okay.
thinking. She's right. I think one of the things that we need to understand is my approach is you educate women about what to look for. They'll avoid that relationship early on. It won't get started. Once you see it, move. And we miss some, like we talked about alcohol and punching walls, anger, all those things, control. We know blame is perfect. All those things that is so important to this. But if you understand those and you see them, and like you said just a minute ago, you have to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, no one will. And I call these men, these type of men, predators for a reason. Men will date if they want to abuse children and they know you have children, they'll date you because you have children.
Right.
So they're going to look for the things in your life that they want to control, because offenders, criminals nowadays, I don't care if it's robbery or domestic violence, they want a compliant victim. They want someone that I can assault and will not call the police on me. So they target you for that. So you have to love yourself. Don't make any excuses for these men. Don't try to change them, and move on to the next guy.
Okay. Thank you for calling in.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye. You know, I want to make a comment about loving yourself. And I want to preface it as everyone that is abused, it doesn't mean that the woman does not love herself. We're just saying that women need to love themselves, but it doesn't mean that every woman that is abused does not love herself. It could be the situation that she's in, it's just hard for her to get out. She can love herself, but there are situations where you could lose your life if you don't take the right measures. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. I have a premise in my book, and I have premises before each chapters, and I'm glad you all made that comment, because I have a premise that says, find strength and love within yourself. No one person can make you strong or love you more than you. You must take your own journey to find these gifts and embrace them. So I'm glad you guys said that. So that's one of the things that I wrote. But this was a journey for me. Now, we have a segment that says, if I knew then what I know now, if I knew then what I know now, I would not have gotten trapped into a relationship that was abusive. I just did not know. And I didn't know the signs. I grew up with my grandmother. I know cases that people were abused, but I didn't know all of the signs. I didn't know the signs when the man was wooing you and all these things, and then that was to come. Because had I known, I wouldn't have gotten to that situation. But sometimes you get into it, and before you know it, you're in it, then you're fearful, other things are happening, and little by little, and then they come and they say, I'm sorry, I apologize, and you accept the apology, and it gets worse. Most times it doesn't get better. So let's move on. We're going to take a shift, and we have about 20 minutes left in our show. This is what I want to talk about. I don't want us to leave here until we talk about what are some things that people can do as a safety plan. So let's look at the HighVibe crew, Epic, Lady G, Cousin Mays, and I'm gonna add you here, Mr. Simmons, Officer Simmons. What are some things that you think that could be a part of a safety plan? I know some things. I know we know some things over here. But when you think about someone who's trapped into a situation, what do you think could be some possible avenues as far as a safety plan?
Well, I think all safety starts with prevention. So like forums like this and education and exposure, I believe that's the beginning of safety. So because there's so many layers to this, but you can go in, like we talked, I think, on one of our segments about having a plan going in and saying, all right, here's my non-negotiables. And with your non-negotiables, you're really clear in your thinking. You both sat in counseling and all that. But even that rigid framework that you have, once emotions let loose and you got years in, you end up just avoiding all those things that you set forth when you were thinking clearly. So it's just really complicated because you're talking about matters of the heart. And so it's difficult to kind of put a step system together, and you can even have it there, but will you follow it? So I remember just in relationships just trying to find out, what do you do, even from a man's perspective, when you're dating someone who has been abused? Because I seen that and didn't recognize it, and I was like, well, I don't know what this is, and I'm gonna err on the side of safety, and I'm just gonna move away from that. But later on, she came back and said, hey, this is all that I was going through here. I had been through this, and I just didn't understand. I didn't understand why I'm going to get your oil changed. You're asking me, am I going to leave you at the store?
Wow.
Like, I'm looking at that like, I'm just getting your oil changed for you. What's, or do these little things that she was talking about, I couldn't recognize it because to me, what I was doing was servitude, and to bring up signs, I think we need to train people to look up at these signs, like y'all were saying today, but also know what to look for in terms of a servant. You got to be able to recognize, like our detective here, he was saying, in his household, it's the culture in your household as a man to show these young men that, hey, I'm serving. Because you're serving, that heart of a servant is thankful. And it's hard to be thankful and hateful at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you're up and doing, if you don't have those old, what do you call them? They're basically chauvinistic viewpoints that you bring in and you're taught and all that, and it's just kind of brought into our society. Well, man, you have that and don't even recognize it. Just like people have their levels of prejudices and don't even recognize it. But how much does that, kind of dwindle away once exposure gets here? So I believe the beginning of safety is education and exposure.
Okay. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah.
I'm thinking over here, and I know some safety things, and I want Detective Carol and Lady Rosalind to chime in. I know one of the first steps is that people need to just listen. If you have friends that you suspect are in a certain situation, listen to what they're saying to you. Because a lot of times our friends, especially with women, we're going to confide in someone, usually. A lot of times the abuser will try to cut you off, but you need to have at least one person, even if it's a person on your job. It may not be a friend that you normally call on the phone, because a lot of abusers, they check your phone, they check your phone logs, they can tell who you called, what time you called the person, how long you talked with them. They'll even download the app so that you can see what the text messages said.
Wow.
So talk with someone on your job that you can confide with, that you can really trust and know they're not going to go on the job and tell everything that's going on. And then there's sometimes you need to tell people on the job what's going on,
absolutely.
or confide in your boss. A lot of times we've had situations over the years that I've worked, and people have come to me, and we have to know these things, because when people are going through the divorces or a bad breakup, you need to notify your job in certain cases, because the abuser may show up on the job. So you need to make sure that the security is alerted. Another thing you want to do, if you have children, just like children have a code that they tell their parents, that parents say, okay, if someone comes to pick you up, here's our code, so you don't go with this person unless they say the code. Children need to have a code to dial 911 if mommy says something. I was going to put those carrots on and cook them. I don't know what the code word is, or something that the perpetrator wouldn't know, and say what it is, so that that child knows to dial 911. So there's a lot of things. We have a call in, so if someone else would like to speak while I take the call.
Can I make a comment?
Certainly.
When I first moved to Texas, Dallas, Texas, in 2007, I worked for Child Protective Service investigator. I was an investigator, and I didn't know they had adult protective service investigator. And just like Dr. Simone was talking about, having someone at work or a close friend or a relative, definitely maybe that person can definitely have that Child Protective Service or the Adult Protective Service number on hand, just in case they need to call, because something may happen then, and call that information in, because that's really, and they're very helpful with so many resources.
Thank you, Lady Mays. We're going to go ahead and take the caller. We have a caller. Who's calling in?
Hi, my name is Eloise.
Eloise. Eloise. Hi, Miss Eloise. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is Dr. Simone and the crew. We have Epic here. We have Lady G. We have Cousin Mays and our special guest, Miss Rosalind, Detective Carol, and Officer Simmons. So we're here to answer your questions. What is your question for tonight?
How do we reach out to our younger generation, to our younger ladies, and just invoke confidence and let them know their worth, and that they don't have to continue to stay in this cycle of domestic violence?
Very good question. Who would like to take the question?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Hi, Eloise.
Hey.
Thank you for calling in.
You know, I would definitely continue to involve our youth in programs outside of the school, outside of the church, outside of the home, to be educated on their worth. Because if you recall, when we were little girls, and we had on fluffy dresses and fluffy socks and big bows in our hair with no hair. And our parents would call us their princess, and you're so beautiful, you're my baby, oh, I love you so much. And then at some point that stopped. And then other things began to filtrate into our spirits. So at some points, we as the community, we have to go back to letting them know how beautiful they are and how much they are worth. There's a statistic that says that between the age of 18 and 24, that's the greatest age range where women are assaulted. Well, it also says that in the recent years that number has decreased by 20%. Well, it has decreased by 20% because those women between 18 and 24 have been murdered by their partner. So we have to take a stance to say, no, she's not going. You can't call her anymore. You can't come here anymore. And we have to make that a stamp with our young women that you can't go. You can't continue to see this person early in the relationship. I'll say this. My husband and I have been together for 18 years. And one thing that I vowed is that I don't care how deep love get, you'll never know where all of my friends live. And just a few weeks ago, we went to one of my girlfriend's house, and he said, I've never been here before. And I said, well, I slipped. I missed my own code. I slipped. That's right. So I got to get a new girlfriend.
You got my house.
Okay, all right. You know, so it's just a matter of us continuing to tell them at all times how valuable they are, and that they're beautiful, not only what they have on, how their hair looks, how their makeup look. We have to teach them the depth of beauty. We have to teach them that. We're so critical of one another, even with our teens nowadays. You know, our parents are just in a different place. So those of us who are, we are in a stage of homostasis, we have to let them know in a loving manner, you know, this is not, you know, appropriate. This is what you'll attract. What kind of guys do you attract? What do you see in yourself? What do you love about yourself? I can't tell you the last time somebody asked me, what did I love about myself? And so that's one thing that we have to definitely ask our girls, what do you love about yourself? That's a strength, and we have to build on those strengths that they have.
Exactly. Excellent answer. Excellent answer. We want to say thank you for calling in, Miss Eloise.
And thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for calling the conversation, and tune in next week, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Great answer. I just wanted to add a couple of more things real quick because we're about 10 minutes down. Another thing that people need to do with a safety plan, we talked about letting the children know a code, a password to call 911. Also, make sure you have those documents that you need, having copies of those documents in another place that's not in the house. You may have a safe deposit box, you may have a P.O. box somewhere, and have those things that you can readily get to those things in case you have to leave in case of emergency. Have copies of Social Security cards, have copies of your driver's license, copies of any document that you think you may need. Also, you may want to pack a bag and put it somewhere. For instance, hide it in the garage, take it to a friend's house, so that if you have to leave in a hurry, you have some clothes or you have some toiletries. Because a lot of women, they end up having to go back home, and they want the police to help them go in the house and get. That's too much drama. So try to have some things that you don't have to go back into the situation, because that in itself can incite a person. That a woman's coming in the house and getting some things, and it's only going to make that person go into more of a rage. And then I want to say, make sure take a bag, and there was something else, but I'm not thinking about. But if anybody else wants to add something, if you want to add something as far as the safety plan. Oh, and as you did say, have a friend that you can go to, or someone's house you can go to that they don't know where they live. They know nothing about this person. Some men don't like this, but every woman should have a friend that your husband or your boyfriend, they don't know anything about where this person lives. Because if you need to hide out, you need to hide out. And I know many women have literally had to leave a city or leave a state to get away to save their life. Okay? Anyone else? We have about 3 or 4 more minutes, and we're going to conclude.
You know, you were saying, going back to the signs.
Yes.
You know, I've always asked young ladies and stuff, or to comment to young ladies, that when a guy approaches you and he tells you all these things that he can do for you, what he'd like to buy you, where he can take you, all these fancy things, ask yourself one question: why you? If he can do all this for you, why is he single? Why is he single?
Wow. That's profound.
I think the important thing is have a plan. But I have to say, if you were married 18 years and he hadn't abused you, I think you're okay.
She better be. If not, I got your back. No, he's not going to do that. I got your back anyway. Let me say this, too. I know what the last thing was, as far as having a bag somewhere, and while you were talking, I was thinking about this. Now I lost my thought.
I know that happens. I know. I hate that when it happens to me, too.
Oh, I know what it is. Change your routine. For instance, you may, this is for listeners, walk the dog. Do something different. Go to the gym. Get a gym membership. Go back and forth. Do something different, and don't do the same thing all the time. But as you may be walking the dog, that may be your escape route. I'm going to go walk the dog. Walk the dog. You may not escape the first time, but you may want to walk the dog the next week, or the next week, or the 4th week, and then you leave. But you have to think about something like that, because when you need to get out, you need to get out. And you will know it. Some people don't tell women when to leave. You can't tell a woman when to leave. She'll know in her heart. All you can do is give her the supports and hope and pray that she will leave the situation. Because sometimes when you tell them to leave, it makes them just stay.
Yeah.
It makes them stay, but they have to make it up
Yeah,
for
I have a
themselves.
comment that I always
Yes.
tell women on calls, you know, when you get tired.
When you get tired.
When you get tired.
When
I
you
said,
get
if I,
tired.
if I come by here
Enough
5,
is
6 years
enough.
from now, you still here, you never got tired. But that you'll just know.
When you get tired.
I can make 100 reports and all, but until you get tired.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
But I think if you educate themselves, you need to know the resources in your community. Dallas County, Tarrant County, almost every county has some organization. One safe place is the one in Tarrant County. They provide attorneys, they help out with divorce, they have money to get you job relocation. They have all these resources to help you. And so know where those places are. But do not ever tell the abuser that you're leaving him,
Yes.
because
No.
your risk of getting killed go through the roof.
Oh, yes.
Do not tell him I'm leaving you.
Do not. Do not. And I'm glad you talked about the help and the situations that we have in the Metroplex hotlines. There's a domestic violence hotline. You can find it on the internet. It's 1-800-799-7233. And it's a 24-hour hotline. You can call it from anywhere in the United States. It's a domestic violence hotline. And if you're in immediate danger, dial 911. Or if you can't get to a phone, get on your computer and send an email to someone, or send a text message, or send a Facebook message when someone's asleep. You might not be able to get to a phone and just dial at that moment, but whenever you can, if you're in distress, make the call. I'm going to get ready to conclude, but I want to say thank you to everyone, our special guests that came out today. Let's give them a hand. I think we learned a lot of informative things, and I want to encourage everyone. I'm going to put my plug in for my book, because I did say if we can just save one life. The name of the book is Beneath the Scar, Rise to Healing by Dr. Simone Brown. Again, this was birthed from my heart, because if I can save just one person, this book is not in vain. And women are having discussions about this book all over the place. And pick up your copy. You can go to Simone Publishing, SAMONE Publishing.com. Again, SimonePublishing.com. And if there's anyone who would like to think about writing a book about your situation, you can contact me as well, and we can get your story published, because we know that if you have a book inside of you and you share that with others, you may save a life as well. Do we have anything else before we conclude? Epic, Lady G, Cousin Mays, anything before we
I
conclude?
just want to say this is a very, very, very good panel, very informative. I thank you guys for opening up and sharing with us, you know, because, you know, the expertise we have, we can, iron sharpens iron. We can, as teachers and as educators, we can take that back to our youth. I know I'm inspired by it. You know, I'm inspired, so.
And we thank you guys for taking your time out of your busy schedules and coming out and just sharing this time with us. And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. I made it.
You made it to the finish line.
I made it.
Okay, and again, I'm delighted. I'm Dr. Simone. Thank you guys so very much. And I want to thank my cohorts for letting me have the show tonight. I take the lead on the show. I do appreciate you. And you can go to my page, Dr. Simone, on Facebook, and like my page and see all the things that I do to support the cause of domestic violence. And I want to send a shout out to Lady Lotus, who is the CEO of this operation. And she and her cohorts, they do an awesome job of empowering the community. So we want to say thank you to her. And thank you, our special guest, Ms. Roslyn, Detective Carol, and very own Mr. Simmons. I keep saying Mr. Simmons. I know it's Officer Simmons. Thank you so very much. You guys are so knowledgeable, and I'm very appreciative that you've come to be here with us tonight. We love you, and thank you for being our special guest on The Conversation.
That conversation.
That conversation.
The conversation.
Thank you, guys. Tune in next week, Monday night from 6 to 8.